class with the concept of that Hashem has no body. He doesn't have a hand, he doesn't have an eye, he doesn't have a head, he doesn't have toenails. But then the question, of course, is the Torah talks about it, that Hashem took us out with an outstretched hand. Hashem looks at all of the people, Hashem speaks to people, and so on. So the conventional answer is that Hashem wants us to relate to him. So the Torah speaks in the language of man. Because, just to make a separation, I speak English. If someone speaks Mandarin Chinese, I don't know what they're saying. If I could hear an angel speaking, or even the way birds are chirping and seem to be communicating, I wouldn't understand anything. So in order for me to understand what the Torah wants me to understand, what Hashem allows me to understand, the Torah the Torah uses the terminology of man. So Hashem took us out with a hand. It's not a hand, but in order for us to understand that we were removed from Egypt to outside of Egypt, he uses the word hand. This explanation suffices, actually, on face value, but in the last class, I tried to convey a little bit deeper this teaching based on the teachings of the Rebbe. And I explained that when we look at a hand, of course, we see flesh. But actually, when we think of hand, we don't really think necessarily of flesh. We think about what is the capability of a hand. So, for example, we would say on a crane, right? It's moving a type of a hand to excavate the dirt. Now, clearly, it's metal. It's not flesh and blood, but it seems to be doing the job that we would associate with a hand. So if we had 1,000 people digging a hole, it would be a very big cavity in the earth. And today with technology and with metal, we could have the hand of the crane excavate. So in a sense, the hand is the same, because they're both conveying the same purpose. So if a person, for example, has a big heavy load and he sees someone and he says, "Hey, mister, can you give me a hand?" He obviously does not want him to cut off his hand, because that's not going to be helpful. So what does he mean when he says, "Can you give me a hand?" What he means to say is, just like a hand is able to move, it's able to lift, it's able to caress, it's able to do many things. So I cannot do this by myself. I need assistance. But instead of saying the word, "Can you assist me?" they'll use a slang, "Can you give me a hand?" So in truth, Hashem is not, when the Torah tells us that God took us out with an outstretched hand or with a strong hand, it's not lying. It's exactly the truth. The purpose of a hand is used to move and to take, and a very strong hand can extricate something from it being held down, or it could lift something which is very heavy. Okay. So we ended with Halacha 11, paragraph 11 of the first chapter of the laws of the foundation of Torah. So now I'll read the 12th paragraph, which is the conclusion of the first chapter. I'll do a quick review, and then we'll start chapter 2. Because this is true. What does that mean? That nothing, because Hashem has no body, therefore, it follows that nothing bodily can change him. So if I have a body, I could get cold, I could warm myself up. but Hashem has no body, so therefore he is unchanging. Kol hadvarim halalu v'chayetz b'hem shenemru b'Torah b'neviim u'b'divrei neviim. So that means that everything that was said in the Torah concerning a change, or in the words of the prophets, Hakel, Mashal, Umalitza, it's all in the form of a parable, in the form of an analogy. Kameshnemafor says, for example, Yeshev Bashamayim Yischok, that there are certain foolish activities of man, especially the enemies of the Jewish people. They sit and they plot, and they're convinced that their plot against the Jewish people is going to be successful. And the expression is, God laughs at them. Now, does he really sit on a chair? Is there really a guffaw? Of course not. But Yeshev Hashmayim Yitzchak means when we sit and laugh, what are we actually conveying? We're conveying that this thing is ridiculous. Of course, it could be laughter as a joke, but if someone tells you, you know something, I can make myself into an elephant. So you sort of, right? You did. So Yeshev Hashmayim Yitzchak means he discounts it completely, but he uses the expression so man can have an understanding of how Hashem, in italics, laughs it off. The same thing is when there's a verse that it says in the Torah, Ki asuni bahavleim. If Jewish people, heaven forbid, worship an idol, God says, they have vexed me. They have got me upset with their foolishness, with their vanity. Or it says, Kasher sos Hashem, as God will rejoice. All of these ideas of God expressing an emotion, all of them fall under the rule that the Torah is speaking in the language of man. The same way it says, do you think you could get me angry? It says, I am the eternal and I do not change. If it actually meant that within the essence of God, he is laughing or he is not laughing, he's angry, that means he is changing internally. And God is true, as we spoke in the past, and he is unchanging. Because the only time there's change, the only time a person could be changed from angry to happy, from tired to awake, etc., is only to a body. And the way he calls the body, in contrast, of course, to God, is it's a dark, lowly body. Sheichne batechema. I mean, it's like pottery. Asher ba'afi yasedam. The foundation of the body is from the earth. Avol hu baruch hu, but Hashem, blessed be He, Yisala v'Yasemim al kol zeh. He's infinitely, he's above, he's exalted from all of this. So in chapter 1, we have actually more than one principle. And again, to remind you from a couple of classes ago, there are two things that we have to be familiar with. One is to believe in God. One is to know God. And then there's sort of a mixture. Know God so you could come to believe in Him. Most of us think that belief and knowledge are not only not the same, but they're actually opposites. And simply put, if you could know, then why do you have to believe? And if you believe, that means you can't know. But the Rambam began with the foundation of all foundations and the pillar of all wisdom is to know that God exists. So this idea, the knowledge, which opens up another discussion, which I'm only going to merely touch upon, not delve into it. How do you define knowledge? What does it mean to know something? For example, I might know that there's some bacteria on my skin. I might know that, but I pay no attention to it. It means nothing to me, actually. And when I wash my hands and it says it kills 99% of germs, again, I don't see it, I don't deal with it. However, if I was a surgeon or a doctor and I had a cut, it would mean very, very much that there are germs and it has to be antiseptic, it has to be cleansed. But for the average fellow who's going to work and he's sitting by his desk and he's playing with his computer or he's playing baseball, the fact that there might be some bacteria or germs on his hand, it doesn't mean anything until he wants to eat, and then he'll wash his hands. So there's a knowledge which really doesn't concern me at all. If I go a little bit deeper, someone could tell me that there are so many elements, which I forgot already in chemistry, but do you remember? No, I don't remember. Well, why not? You knew it then. I didn't really know it then. I memorized it for the test, but it really didn't affect me, so I really don't know it. On the other hand, if I would be a chemist, this knowledge would be very practical and I would know it. So what I'm getting at is knowledge doesn't only mean information. Knowledge means that the information has an effect on you and you have an effect on that information. When a person knows something, then usually not only does it have an effect, but very often it can be expressed in an emotion. So if someone tells me about the bacteria I have or something like that, I pay no attention to it until he tells me it's a very dangerous thing. You need to put a cream on it. And now suddenly I'm very conscious of it. Well, why? Because it affected me. So I might actually be frightened somewhat of this, or I might be very grateful to the person who told me. So the knowledge has an effect on the emotion. An emotion that comes spontaneously we could argue this, we could debate this and so on, but for now, from what I'm trying to convey, an emotion that comes almost instantaneously or randomly is often an emotion which is an untrue emotion. So if I wake up in a bad mood, probably there's a reason for it. But let's say I don't know why I'm in a bad mood. But it's not going to stay with me because as soon as I come and I take a bus and I have a seat, I might lighten my mood. Wow, that's great. Usually I stand. And the same thing is if I wake up in a good mood and then I try and I can't find a parking space and my day is ruined. Okay. So it's frivolous. Of course, one of the main differences between infatuation with a person or infatuation with an idea versus a more genuine is knowledge. So the more I know about something, the more I will either be attracted to it or repelled by it. And if I don't understand it and I don't think about it, the chances are I will be completely neutral, or if I do have some form of an emotion, it's very superficial. So essentially, we are changing based on what we understand and what we know. So I might be, I might have a neighbor who I think is a very nice person. We don't really know each other, but, we exchange good mornings and occasionally a remark about the weather. And I'm neither attracted nor repelled. I just accept until I find out that this person might be a terrible criminal, a murderer. Maybe he's a mafia don. And then suddenly I'm going to have an emotion. Now, he didn't do anything to me, but the fact that I have now knowledge will change my emotion. And the more I know about what he did and what he stands for and what is perhaps the mafia, maybe I don't even know what it is. It's criminal. Okay, criminal. But the more I delve into it, the stronger my emotion will be. The reverse, obviously, is also true. Hello, hi, Bob. Things are very good. And then I find out that he runs a nonprofit. He helps thousands of people. He's selfless, and so on and so forth. And then it becomes like I admire him. I want to get closer to him, etc. So emotions change, and primarily emotions change based on knowledge. Now, what does God not know? The answer, of course, is a silly question. He knows everything. He knows the past, he knows the present, he knows the future. How could there be a change in his emotion? What would change that emotion? So clearly, whenever we talk about Hashem is a jealous God, like in the Ten Commandments, he will or Hashem is happy when we do certain things, we don't necessarily mean an emotion as a human. What we mean is, how would you act if you were happy? How would you act if you were angry? How would you act if you were relaxed? How would you act if you're anxious? Based on the way we would act, we could somehow imagine or extrapolate when we do a mitzvah, there's a sense of joy for God. God enjoys us. He's happy with us. We cause him pleasure. So this is a principle that we have to know. That we are close enough to God to create a response within God. Because frankly, strangers don't get you upset or whatever. They have nothing to do with you. Your children, your spouse, your best friend, this is different. What they do obviously will have an effect on you. You will respond in a certain way. So the first thing to know is, yes, we are close to God. We are his children, etc. And the way we act will be the way we act will cause an effect in heaven, whether it be from the side of kindness or the opposite. But the actual concept of an emotion is a creation. So no one would ever think that God is a stone or a caterpillar or an angel. They're all creations. So too, the human response, which is through knowledge, we have an emotion, doesn't apply to Hashem. And yet, we use the language of an emotion to remind us that our actions do count, and Hashem is involved, and therefore he lets us know in advance that if we do his will, he will be pleased. Though the word pleased by God is of a different character and nature than of man. So let me go back to knowledge and belief. Knowledge means that you're affected by it. Once we know about God, and once we think about God, we begin to realize that we don't understand. To be a little bit cute, and I could say 7 layers. I'm only going to say 3. They say they tell of a fellow who walked into an academy where they studied Torah. And there were like two students. They were like senior students. It would be the equivalent of a master's, okay? They're studying Talmud and they're really analyzing the words and trying to explain the opinions, and they go back and forth until finally one of them says, I'm not getting it. I just don't understand why Rabbi Meir said this and this. And there was a fellow who had walked in who had no understanding whatsoever what they were talking about, but he piped in, I also don't understand. Now, obviously, they both did not understand. One did not understand because he understood, and one did not understand because he has no idea what they're talking about. So when we think about the greatness of God, when we think about what is God, who is God, and so on, first we have to make it real to us. First we have to delve into it as much as our mind can contain. And then we will realize that we really don't understand. What does it mean that he has joy, but it's not really joy, not human joy? Or that there's wisdom, but it's not human wisdom, it's not intelligence. So the more we know, the stronger the belief. So which comes first, thought, belief, or knowledge? And here where the Rambam does not deal with that, but it's a given. We are born believing. So the source of to inquire after the knowledge of God is already programmed into us. We are born believing in God, though we cannot articulate it and we're not mature enough to express it. So you don't have to have any issues, and I've said this many times to people, you don't have to worry about explaining God to children, because if you just tell them God is watching you, they accept it totally. It's a remarkable thing. If you say, so-and-so is watching you, the child will say, I don't see him, where is he? If you tell him God is watching you, he says, I don't see him. And you say, oh, don't worry, you don't have to see him, God is here. And he says, good, that makes sense to me. Because every child, every Jew, in fact, maybe even every human, is born with a belief in a creator. However, we are obligated as a commandment not to only believe in God, because that you can't give a commandment to believe. So you believe. You're commanded to make your belief real. And this is, of course, which is going to be the beginning of chapter 2 of the Rambam. But I will tell you in advance, this is where Kabbalah and Chassidut really comes in and is introduced to make the inborn belief of a Jew very genuine, very real, very immediate, and as it progresses in knowledge, the belief becomes stronger because we begin to understand of how much we don't understand. Let me give just one more example of this concept. Just one more concept. And that is, a person says, I believe in God. And you say, that's wonderful. What exactly does that belief entail? And he says, I believe God created heaven and earth and everything in between, as the Rambam actually said. Now, that statement is 100% accurate and true. But as we mature, we see everything around us as having a source. So if the child comes down and sees something new and says, where did this come from? No parent has ever said it came by itself. I bought it in Safeway, or I received it from grandma, or daddy brought it home. Because everyone understands that on an empty table, it doesn't materialize bread, fried eggs, and ketchup. Someone had to make it. Where did it come from? Even an infant, though we cannot get into the mind of an infant, but even an infant knows that it has a source. So why do we need belief to believe that God created heaven and earth? Your clothing came from somewhere. You came from somewhere. You came from your parents. They came from their parents. Everything that we know, that we look at a tree, it came from a seed, etc., etc. Why would you think that the world, the cosmos, just happened? So yeah, we begin with the statement, I believe that Hashem created heaven and earth. But in a very short while, it metamorphosizes into, I know God created heaven and earth, because it's in the human mind, it has to come from somewhere. So whatever even if you're going to camouflage it with all kinds of fancy words, the question will always be, who created the first atom? Where did the atom, atom, where did it come from? So clearly it came from somewhere, something. That's God, the originator of all existence. But that should not suffice for us. That should not suffice for us in terms of believing. There's much greater level, because you could know that. Imagine a teacher writing a problem. I'll do something really simple. 2 + 2 = 4. And he says to the child, do you understand that? He said, no, I believe you. No teacher will suffice with that. No, what they'll do is they'll take 4 objects and 4 apples, put it on the table, count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to take away 2. How many are left? 1, 2. So that's what it means. 4 minus 2 is 2. Don't tell me you believe me. Understand that. And so it's true with all basic human knowledge. If you could understand it and know it, you don't need belief. So someone says, I believe that if you throw something in the air, it will fall down. And the other guy says, you believe it? Everyone knows it's gravity. Now, actually, no one understands what gravity is in any case. But at least we have a term, gravity. It's the attraction between one thing to something else. So don't suffice with the basic belief that we're born with, which is to believe that there is a God and he's the creator. Use the mind to go deeper and deeper into characteristics, qualities, and ideas about Hashem. So the foundation of all is Hashem exists, and he needs no support. You don't have to prove that he exists. He doesn't have to create a world to show everyone that he is. He is, period. So his existence needs nothing other than himself. Any other creation needs Hashem. Nothing can exist without God. God can and does exist without anything. He needs no angels to make him God. This God, as we read, is one. He's in heaven, and on earth he's not here. He's one. He's in heaven and earth simultaneously. He's in the physical, the spiritual, the non-existent, he is everywhere. So instead of trying to think all of the places where God is, we could simply say there is no place where he is not. The fact that Hashem is everywhere precludes and emphasizes that there's only one God. Because were there to be one, there'd be more than one God, heaven forbid, that would mean that there's a place where he is not, because this is not my place, it's the other God's place. But God is truly one, indivisible. You can't chop him into pieces and say, this is a piece of God. God is one in a manner that does not exist in existence, because everything, whether it be a person, has organs and limbs. Each organ and limb has cells. Each cell has an inner cell, and so on and so forth. Everything of creation can be broken into another segment, which essentially means all of the segments together equal a whole. But God cannot be broken into segments. There is only one God who is eternal. Now, I've said this many times, but I never really spent a couple of extra words. So let me do that now. We think of creation as before and after. Before creation, there was only God. After creation, there's God and what he created. The concept of time is a creation in itself. So there is no before and after, early and later, or the concept of age. God does not age. In general, time is connected to place. It's a long discussion, but some very obvious observations. All of us know and have heard the term, you cannot be in two places at the same time. That in itself is a statement that time and place are connected. Simply put, if the average, okay, let's take the simplest form of time, 1 day. A day has the daylight hours and it has the night hours. Or to put it differently, 1 day includes the movement of the sun and the movement of the moon. If the sun would not move, would there be time? It would be 12 noon, much more than just 12, 1 hour. If you want to see time, we would look at the sky, not only the moon, you will see clouds moving. The movement means X amount of seconds or hours have passed. We all know the sun dial. When you look at the shadow, that means the sun has moved X amount it has taken X amount of time for us to recognize the movement of the sun. If there's no place, there's no concept of time. Hashem created place. He created existence. When he created place, he created time as well. So can we truly understand that? Absolutely not. We cannot. Because everything in the human existence is connected to time, including the very concept of breathing in, out. The idea of your heart. It beats, stops, so to speak, beats again, beats faster, beats slower. This idea of faster and slower, etc., is all connected to the heart. It's connected to an object. When there are no objects and there are no existence, there is certainly no time. But we can't understand that because we're living. It's me now trying to understand what is impossible. So that's belief. But that doesn't change the truth. God is eternal. He was, he is, and he will be exactly the same. God has no limitations. He has no body. He needs no support. And all of the descriptions in the Holy Bible, which describe Hashem having emotions or Hashem responding, is for the purpose of us to understand him to the best of human ability and to relate to him. Okay. Chapter 2 begins with, in addition to believing in God, there's a mitzvah to have an emotional connection to God. And there are two mitzvahs. Ha'el hanichbad v'neira hazeh, this awesome and respected God. Mitzvah, it's a commandment. La'ohavai, to love him. U'layir imenu, and to be fearful from him. Shenema, and it gives two verses of the Torah. There's one verse that says, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, you should love God your God. And it also says, V'nema es Hashem Elokecha tira, you should fear God. Let me read the next one, and then we'll talk and end with the thought. Says the Rambam, we're supposed to love God. What is the manner that leads us? What should we do to love him and fear him? So he explains. When a person will think about Hashem's actions, uvruav haniflaim hagdalim, and just look at what God created, wondrous creatures. And you will see wisdom in the creations that God created that has no limitation. If you actually investigate that, miyad hu oyev u'meshabech, he will immediately come to love, to praise, umefar, umesava, taiva gedela. You're going to actually have a tremendous yearning to know Leda Hashem HaGodel, to know God. And the way King David said is, my soul is thirsty for God. So, okay. So essentially, loving God means the desire to connect. And I'll talk about this in a minute. And why would you want to connect? Why would you want to get close? Why would you want to feel his presence? Because he's awesome. Look at this, the laws of nature. Look at everything. Someone said, rather humorously, you know, all of the great scientists should be embarrassed before a cow. Why? He said, can they make a machine that you put in grass and out comes milk? It never happened. But what's a cow? It munches on the grass and on the hay, and yet it's able to give liters of milk, which everyone uses and needs, and life itself is, the baby is given milk. So don't show off that you're able to make a computer. Could you do that? And someone else, this is years ago, I remember reading, someone made the comment that we're born with a heart as big as your fist approximately. I don't remember how many times it beats in a lifetime. But one thing's amazing. If you're living till 119 and your heart starts beating when you were born, that means you have a pump that has been working day and night without any stop. There's no respite. The heart cannot go on vacation. It can't get a technician to relieve it. A healthy person will have a healthy heart for decades and decades. What machine do we have today that pumps, that doesn't need to be stopped and serviced or replaced? We don't have that. So the truth is, the greater you are in knowledge of the sciences, the earth sciences especially, the more you just stand back in amazement and wonder about the great wisdom, the great beauty of God's creation. And he's much greater than that, but this is something that we could see. How could you not want to be attracted to such an awesome creator? That's love. But together with that will come the flip side. When you begin to think how wondrous everything is, then you're also going to get a sense of awe and almost shame. You're going to, draw backwards, take a step. You'll be frightened and in reverence, and you will know who am I? I'm a small little creature in darkness. What I know is minuscule before he who has complete knowledge. And as King David said, when I look up at the heavens and I see the glitter of the stars, I say to myself, what is man that you should even think about him? There's such awesome beauty. And all you have to do is lift your eyes and see it. Hashem cares about me. So that will actually cause a reverence and awe. Fear does not mean fear of punishment. Fear means the shame you feel or the inadequacy you feel in front of greatness. And therefore, you don't get too close. You actually stay where you are or you take a step back. It's like the Hasidim would often use the example of someone, a peasant, who all of his life was told about the great Tsar. He's wondrous, he's handsome, he's everything. And his most fervent wish would be to see the Tsar. So they give him a brand new set of clothing, and as he's getting closer and closer to the palace, he gets more and more excited, and he passes the royal garden. He's amazed. He comes in, he sees the soldiers, he goes further, he sees works of art, and something changes. Suddenly, his desire to see the king gets transformed into frightened. I don't know if I want to see the king. He's so great and mighty, I don't deserve to see him. You understand? So that's not necessarily fear that he's going to kill him. It's fear of understanding that you're in the sense of tremendous power and influence or beauty, and that humbles you. So based on, we have a commandment to love God. We have a commandment to fear God. The Rambam says it doesn't come from sniffing the air. It comes from thinking, an observation. When you see the beauty of creation, you will come to love God. And simultaneously, when you see the beauty of creation and realize that you are in the scheme of creation, you are very, very tiny, like a speck of dust or maybe less, then you will have a sense of awe, reverence, and fear. Says the Rambam, based on this, he's going to give some descriptions of the natural wonders of earth. So we have over here an insight. If you ask a person, do you love God? Very often they will look at you strangely. What do you mean? What do you mean love God? I believe in God. I believe that do you love him? What do you mean love him? I could love my dog. Of course, more importantly, I could love my family. Love God. It's amazing how everything that we are is because God is creating us, creating the environment around us, and we give so little thought to God. To make a lahavdil, to make a separation between talking about God, so many people, especially young adults and people that are starting life, they actually ignore their parents. Not in a bad way. They're just too busy. So once a week, a phone call is already a big spiel. Coming for a dinner, that's already a sacrifice. So you have to ask yourself a question. Who are you? Who made you physically? Who educated you? Who gave you the opportunity to realize your goals? It's the very same two people that you find difficult to make time for. And yet, your best friend who recommended you to go to this vacation, you're much closer. You call them up constantly, thank you. And people that are almost incidental into your life, you seem to give them, at least superficially, more time. Of course, somewhere along the line, assuming it's a functional family, we begin to think more about them, and we try to spend more time with them. And then when it's already the time when our parents or loved ones are in heaven, then some of us begin to think constantly about them. It's like so strange. Why did I mention this? We should be thinking about God, living with God on a daily basis. And not only on a daily basis, we should be thinking about him. And those of us that were privileged to grow up with some Jewish knowledge know we actually pray to God 3 times a day. And that's probably not enough, but at least 3 times a day, we focus our attention to, blessed are you, God, master of the universe. And we think about him every time we eat, because we make a blessing before eating, we make a blessing after eating. We even think about him that we have the physical possibility to get rid of our waste after using the facilities. The laboratory, we say another blessing. And if it's raining outside, we're told to think about the miracle of rain. If you hear thunder and lightning, there's a blessing. It's not superimposed on us. Just think for a moment of life itself, and you have to be brought to the realization of Hashem. So love, if you just answer, I love God, I fear God, that's very superficial, bordering on a lie. You have to first think and concentrate before you could have a true emotion. That is why, with this thought will end. I'll probably continue with this at a later date. But this is one of the main reasons why in the Chabad movement, we are taught that even before prayer, and especially in the morning, you should study something godly. And in a general sense, anything of Torah, which is God's instructions to the Jewish people, when you study Torah, inevitably, you're really thinking about God. Okay, my friends, shalom, and hopefully we'll continue next week.